What's going on, everybody? Happy Sunday to everybody that is watching this. I was checking through some memories on my Facebook, and I realized that today, September 10th, is World Suicide Prevention Day. Now, I remember doing a video about this. I think it may have been back in 2020 or 2019. I'm not too sure which of those years I made that video. But I feel the need to make another one, mainly because of what I spoke to SC Steve on one of our shows about why I'm against suicide like I am. I had lost 4 people that were dear to me from suicide. My uncle, my girlfriend, and 2 good friends of mine. Anybody who has lost a good friend or loved one from suicide can tell you how much that hurts. They could tell you the amount of pain that the news of that occurring caused them. And it is painful. You wish you could have been there to prevent it from happening. You wish you could have done something. You could have talked to that person. You could at least reach out to them, or they reach out to you. Let's also not forget it was suicide that led me to stray away from Joe Cronin. Because everybody knows, I've detailed this many times in the past, about his jokes about suicide. Many times on his programs, he will talk about, oh, I hate my life, I want to end it. He's repeated that multiple times in the past. I don't know if he still does it. I know a couple people said that he did that so people would feel bad for him and donate money to him. But to those who had lost loved ones and friends, relatives from suicide, it's not exactly a laughing matter. I'm going to go over the 4 people that had ended their lives, starting with my uncle, who, when I was a wee kid, drove up in front of our old house back in southeast Michigan. Left the title of that car to my father. And blew his brains out right in that car in front of our house. I was a small kid. I didn't know what was going on. It took me years to find out the truth of what he did. And the reason he did what he did was because he had found out he had terminal cancer from all the years of smoking. He had witnessed somebody he knew die of cancer after being in pain for such a long time. He figured he'd take the easy way out. There are times where I still think about him. There are also times when I wish he could have held on and stayed strong and do whatever he can to fight this, but he didn't. Now we flash forward to 1997, when a good friend of mine that I would see at the City Club many, many times before, sometimes at the Majestic, sometimes at this old coffee house called The Zone. His name was Izzy. He was 20 years old when he hung himself while visiting a friend. Word has it that he went to the bathroom for a good 7 minutes. Friends waited a long time. They decided to check on him, what's going on, and he found that he had hung himself. The guy was going through massive amounts of personal issues. He lost his best friend. He lost his girlfriend. She decided to dump him for somebody else. Now, there was a rumor possibly that he left behind a newborn daughter. I do not know if that was true or not. I do remember that the girl who cheated on him, apparently, she got tons and tons of hate from the City Club crowd. Because apparently she was that one that pushed him to do what he did. We never saw or heard from her ever again. Now, I was not able to go to his funeral the following Saturday morning because the same time I found out about Izzy killing himself was the same day our dad had to be taken to the hospital. He had developed gangrene on the toes of his left foot. And on that very Saturday morning when his funeral was being held, me, my sister, her husband, and my mom had to be there for our father during surgery to have those toes removed. We all had to be there. And yes, I felt bad about not attending his funeral and saying my last goodbye to the guy. He was 20 years old, as I stated, and there are a couple of times where I think about what he would have looked like today. Would he be mature? Would he be older looking or what? We do not know. Izzy wasn't thinking about the future, he was thinking about right now. Now we go to 2001, when my girlfriend of 3 years took her life. It was about almost 3 months after I saw my father die before my own eyes. A month after her mom dies in her sleep. And to add to that, she had mental issues. She had what they call a chemical imbalance. There were many times I had to comfort her, prop her hopes up, because a lot of times she would be depressed, all the hell. One time she started freaking out at her house, thinking that were rats in the air vents when there really wasn't. She often would come up with these crazy theories here and there. I had to rely on, let me take that back. I had to inform her, no, that's not true. That's not true at all. And a lot of times, she was to the point where she couldn't live without me. She couldn't stand being without me each and every day. It's like she'd grown way too dependent on me. Finally, one Sunday evening, I called her while I was at my old restaurant job. I asked if everything is okay. She said no. She OD'd a whole bunch of pills. I kept pleading her to call 911, 911. She said she will. And after I got off of work, I went right to her house, knocked on the door, called her number repeatedly. The following day, I called once again. And her stepdad informed me that she was no longer with us. She was taking all these medications that were prescribed by her so-called good doctor, to the point where she often joked about taking what was called a pill salad. It's another reason why I question some of these doctors prescribing this drug, that drug, this drug, that drug, to go with this drug and that drug at times. After that, my life was never the same. The woman I tried to fulfill that void with had an attitude, and she kept hidden from me a drug addiction, which I did not find out till later on, a year and a half later. She had used different versions of my name to get free things in the mail. She had stolen many items from this store, that store. Obviously, because she wanted to keep the money she had for her drug addiction, but she had to have other things, so she had to swipe them from this place, that place. But because of what this druggy bitch did, we had to sell my car, my house, and when I dumped her, she made threats towards me and my employees, my co-employees, I should say, at my old job, that I finally had to, they finally decided to let me go because of this bitch. Everything just went way under because my girlfriend decided to end her life. Things were never the same after that. Now we also flash forward to the early 2000s. I'm not too sure it was, but another buddy of mine named Dirk, who I knew used to go to City Club with his female companion, we would talk, we would hang out, He would invite me over to his house parties, which were the bomb. Videos of Duran Duran in concert were playing on the TV. They had hors d'oeuvres, a lot of good discussions. A lot of good topics were being discussed. He was showing me his drawings. He would later move to Boston around 1998. I know he came back to Detroit a couple of years later to visit, then moving back to Boston soon afterwards. I tried to find him on Facebook a few years ago, but was unable to. I asked about it, and someone who knew him messaged me and told me he ended up killing himself because he ran himself into massive amounts of debt, which he was not able to get himself out of. And I was in complete shock over that. Fuck yeah, it was sad. 4 people that I knew took their lives. So you kind of see where I'm coming from when I spoke against the suicide jokes that Joe Cronin was doing a couple of years ago. You may remember I did a couple of shows with Bullseye, whose older brother took his own life when he was a wee kid. In fact, I'll go on the record to say right now, I question him making those kind of jokes when I first started listening to him. I should have brought it up back then, but I don't know why I didn't. I guess it takes that certain moment to really make you speak out against something. Now, I want to send out my thoughts, prayers, condolences, and especially acknowledgement of those who, as I said, lost loved ones, friends, relatives from suicide. Because after being in that boat a few times, it does hurt. And you know what? A lot of times that pain doesn't go away. There are a few songs by the group Dead Can Dance that Nancy loved. Especially this one here. I get this, if I remember, it's called Catalina or Catatana. I think it's Catalina, if I remember. I haven't heard that song in ages. That was one of her favorites from them. She also got me into other acts like a group called Biosphere. Their album Substrata I have downloaded on my computer and my MP3. Black Tape for a Blue Girl. She was into them. And yes, I still miss her, needless to say. But at the times, I often cuss her out underneath my breath, saying, We could have been married. We could have had a future. After you did what you did, my life was never the same. I'm going to end this video with some very important advice to everybody out there that's thinking of taking their lives. And that's simply one word: don't. Suicide is probably the most selfish act in the world, because you're not thinking about your friends, you're not thinking about your loved ones, you're not thinking about your relatives, the people you work with who respect and love you. You're only thinking about yourself. You can ask possibly Courtney Love what she was feeling when her husband Kurt Cobain ended his life back in '94. I could only imagine what their daughter, Frances Bean, must feel about this whole thing. I know she went off on singer Lana Del Rey about saying something about suicide. And I guess whoever wrote the line in the MASH theme song, "Suicide is painless," that's an all out fucking lie. Because it isn't. It's very painful to the people who care, respect you, adore you. Down below in the description is a number that I recommend everybody calling if they feel down to the dumps, down and out, or feel like they just can't go on anymore. And I encourage everybody, man, woman, child, young, old, middle age, to call that number. Don't destroy the most precious thing that God gave, which is you. If you have any stories to share, go ahead and leave them in the comments below. In the meantime, I'll be hitting the hay pretty soon. And also, subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell and like button. Stay strong, everybody. Thank you.